special guest, reporter for MassLive.com, Chris Cotillo. Jake Palmacki. Very special guest today, Steve Peralt. Los Angeles Dodgers prospect, Jimmy Titus.
For us, that was our guest today, Mason Field.
Austin Upshaw. Jared Weinstein.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Welcome back to Behind Under Sports. I know it's been a while, but guys, we're back, and we got a great interview for you today. Today on the program, we have Danny Vietti of CBS Sports. He does a podcast with Will Middlebrooks. He does social media, and he writes. He's a great guy. It's a great interview. We talk about the Padres, White Sox, players expressing themselves in the game, and so much more. Huge thanks to Danny for coming on. We really appreciate it, and I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. So thank you guys for watching, and enjoy. We're joined with a very special guest, Danny Vietti. Danny, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, of course. Always down to talk a little bit of ball.
Yeah. So Danny's with CBS Baseball, and right now he's doing a podcast with Will Middlebrooks, formerly of the Boston Red Sox, Padres, maybe Brewers for a little bit, Phillies, a bunch of teams for Will. But we're here to talk to Danny today. He kind of jumped on the Twitter scene, got a lot of followers pretty fast after a pretty crazy incident. If I'm pretty sure that's why you got all your followers real quick. Padres incident, maybe?
It's been the past, probably a year and a half. It's been in the works. Once I really started writing for the site, and I mean, there's definitely a good amount of Padres following on my Twitter. There's no doubt about that. But.
So, I mean, I followed your account before you did your little Padres stunt, which we'll get into, and, great content for CBS and writing for everything. So how did you get started with CBS?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ben. So when I was going to college, I went to school in Northern California, just outside of Sacramento. I played baseball for William Jessup University, which is a small NAIA college. And that allowed me, I transferred a few times before then, but I ended up at William Jessup. That allowed me to also work part-time. I don't know if you're familiar with Max Preps. They're the high school sports source. Their headquarters are located just outside of Sacramento. And so I was able to play ball while also doing part-time work for Max Preps with social media. That led to the job with CBS because for those that don't know, CBS Sports owns Max Preps. So just kind of work my way up the ladder. Still, I'm dipping my toes into the social media scene and also the writing scene. And lately it's been the podcast scene, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, a little bit of everything, like you're saying, social media, writing, now podcasting. And when it's all said and done, do you want to be seen as more of a podcaster or a writer, or would you like to stick to like the social media content side? Like, what's in the future for you?
Yeah, it's constantly changing. It's a good question because when I was first trying to create a career for myself, it was writing. But then, of course, I mean, it's kind of evident now, writing is, I don't want to say it's going downhill, but it's a little fewer and far between, especially when you're talking about newspapers. Publishing in general has been kind of a tough scene. So I just want to be in baseball in some capacity. Ideally, what I would love to do is I really want to tell stories. And I think you can best tell those stories in written form. Sometimes you can do it in podcast form. Sometimes you could do it, in social media, other types. But I think you can really tell the best story through written form. And so ideally, I would love to, I love what The Athletic does. I don't get me wrong, love my company, don't plan on going anywhere, but I really love what The Athletic does. They're able to tell stories. They're able to really find ways to expound and expand on certain situations and different stories in a different fashion than maybe CBS Sports does, ESPN. So I just want to tell stories. I want to be a source for players to share whatever they want to share. May that be in podcast form, written form, whatever it may be.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? Telling stories is so crucial to the game of baseball. I think, baseball stories turn into legends, and that's how we really grow the game aside from just, great players and teams on the field. So it's a great goal to have. And speaking of story, I alluded to it right before, but so a great story that everyone will remember from last season was Fernando Tatis hitting his 3-0 grand slam, which then prompted you to tweet out, if the Padres hit another grand slam tonight, I will run around the state capitol building in downtown Sacramento in a diaper while holding a Fernando Tatis Jr. sign, which ultimately ended up happening. So why don't you walk me through that?
Yeah, you said great memory. I don't think it's a great memory, at least for me. But yeah, it was very spontaneous. It wasn't anything I had planned. I just thought it was, 3 straight days with a grand slam. There's absolutely no chance to
Yeah.
hit 4 straight. It's
Right.
never happened. Major League Baseball history. It's been being played for over a century. It's never happened. So I was just sitting. I was actually visiting my parents. They live about 5 minutes away from the Capitol building in California. And so I was just sitting at home and I'm like, you know what? Why not? Let's have some fun on social media, like always. People really started to pick it up, especially because like you mentioned already, I have kind of a Padres following on social media. And so people started to, do the whole freezing cold takes. They started, they started stirring the pot a little bit. And sure enough, Eric Hosmer. The amazing part about it all is I don't think hitting the 4 straight grand slams, don't get me wrong, that's incredible. But there are a lot of teams that don't even have 4 straight games with bases loaded situations. That's what's so incredible about. I mean, if you were to look at like Las Vegas odds or whatever the odds, I mean, the odds of just having the possibility of that happening would be very slim. And the fact that they hit a grand slam in 4 straight games was incredible. So sure enough, Hosmer hit the slam. Went to the store, got my diaper, did my diaper run, and had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. And then, unfortunately, Hosmer didn't even notice it, which is crazy because he's kind of an online social media presence guy. So
no, but I think we'll be looking for the Twitter pictures and all that. So hopefully whoever it is sticks to their word.
Yeah, they asked him after the game. He said he didn't know, but yeah, I'm going to have to hit him up one of these days and kind of explain the situation because now I'm just known as the creepy diaper guy around the area. So
no, I think most people saw it as dedication and just, your love for the Padres and Fernando Tatis Jr., the rising superstar.
Hopefully, as long as I'm not known as creepy San Diego guy and I'm known more as like you just said, I'm fine with that.
I mean, that's how I saw it. As a huge Fernando Tatis Jr. stan myself, I'm proudly someone who noticed him before the 2020 season. So real proud of that.
I'm just glad to add a little bit more exposure to the situation. I mean, everybody, of course, was on Chris Woodward's, on his back after the 3-0 situation. And it just kind of escalated it all. And I think it brought a little bit of fun to a situation that the whole reason we were in that predicament is because Chris Woodward was essentially downing on the fun. And so I think bringing a little bit more fun to the situation kind of encompassed what the whole situation was really supposed to be in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, and that whole situation has just turned into a whole movement now. I mean, Tatis is in the Adidas and Gatorade commercials, like literally just talking about breaking rules with the unwritten rules and everything. It's just nuts to think of that situation came out of a 2020 baseball season, and it then sparked the 4 straight grand slams and everything. Just the whole Padres success, really, you kind of think leads from that moment.
They're the center of the baseball universe right now. And I mentioned this, I went on a San Diego radio station a couple weeks ago, and I said this before. I think San Diego Padres are really saving baseball. And I don't mean to say that because I don't think a lot of people tend to exaggerate and say baseball is ending this. There's no more fans. Nobody likes the game anymore. I don't think that's the case.
No, it's a $1 billion game.
Exactly. There's plenty of money in it. My gosh, how many under 25-year-old stars do we have in today's game? We have more now. Acuna, Tatis, Bieber. I mean, all kinds of Soto. I mean, the list goes on. We've never had so many young stars in this game. So people tend to exaggerate and say baseball's ending. I don't believe that. But at the same time, I think I wouldn't necessarily say it's growing, at least not at the pace that Major League Baseball or its fans would want it to be. So if we want to continue to, build on the game and try and celebrate the game that is being played today, these are the kind of things we need to do. And celebrating players for celebrating, bat flipping, celebrating after a strikeout, whatever it may be, I think it starts there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I do, the saving baseball thing, you kind of think like everyone says the steroid era and like Mark McGwire, the home run chase, that saved baseball. And obviously, I mean, maybe there's steroids and stuff going on, but not steroid era. But now this is like the new era where, it's flashy that's saving baseball. So you have teams like the White Sox, the Padres, maybe the Mets are going to start being like that. But, you see guys going out there celebrating, pimping home runs, celebrating strikeouts. Like, we got Jose Abreu wearing like 3 chains, and it gets people fired up. And that stuff does have to save baseball, because you see, or not save, like, we get it when we say that. But because you see the games like the NBA, or like Juju Smith, making TikToks before the game, that gets the fans fired up. And baseball just really didn't have any of that until the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's a great point. Such in Major League Baseball has really struggled with this. And I'm not going to say names, but I have spoken to different players around the league, and they have said before joining the team, not just a major league team, but maybe even in their farm systems, the team that they played for has strongly suggested they take control of their social media accounts. And that to me is, one, taking away their voice, and it's hurting the game of baseball, because we want to see what these players do behind the scenes. We want to see them as people. They're not just players. We want to see them as people. And so there were at times that maybe a player would want to tweet something out, maybe it be of their family or whether they're training, and maybe the organization decided that's probably not best for your image. That's not good for the game. We talked about growing the game. It's not a good process in the way that you want to grow the game. We want guys to celebrate. We want guys to be themselves and to get more exposure to who they are off the field. That's huge. And you mentioned the NFL, NBA, even the NHL. They score a goal in the NHL, they're tackling each other, they're doing all kinds of celebrations. I guess the Miami Hurricanes last year made big news because they were doing crazy stuff after their goals. Right. That's good. I mean, I wasn't going to watch an NHL game until I heard the Miami Hurricanes doing all these kind of wacky things after a goal. That's good. Yet we still condemn players for celebrating after a big hit. It's not good. We need to get better as fans, as a game. Clubs need to get better and need to celebrate their players a little bit more.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think we are seeing the game is going in that direction. And you alluded to the social media and having players not have control. I think players are starting to take control, even if they're not really supposed to. And it's something that's awesome. This has been an enormously disappointing offseason so far. It's starting to pick up literally like today and yesterday. It's starting to pick up. But before that, it's so slow. Nothing's happening. And then, the Mets go out and get Francisco Lindor. And then obviously that in itself is exciting. But then you see Stroman, Syndergaard, Trevor May all tweeting about it. And even players on other teams are tweeting about it. So surprising. And that stuff is awesome to see. I know a lot of people aren't on Twitter, especially in the, older baseball fans aren't really on Twitter, but for the younger generation to see that and see the players actually get fired up that they got this new, maybe even face of the franchise, if you want to call him that, it was awesome to see that. And Stroman obviously is someone that's super vocal already, but now that they're on the Mets, Trevor May gets a bigger voice, hopefully. And it's just really cool to see guys do that.
It was. And we talked with Stroman. We had Stroman on the show 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And he basically said, once you establish yourself in the league, you can do whatever you want. But until you do that, your club is going to have some control over some things that you do. And one of those cases could be social media. It's not as if you need to be an all-star in order to be yourself. But once Stroman, he said this in the interview too. He said once he started having the freedom to do what he wanted to do and being himself, not only on the diamond, but off the diamond too, that's where he flourished. And he mentioned this. He said, that's when I became, because I can speak to this too. When I played in college, I tried being the pitcher that my pitching coach tried to be. Then I transferred schools and went to where I ended up, which was William Jessup. My coach said, I want you to be the best version of whatever you are. You know your strengths. I don't know your strengths. I haven't been over your shoulder for the 20 years you've been alive. You know what you do best. I want to try and build on your strengths. And that's what I think is really what it's all about. Because once Stroman is able to be himself and voice his opinions, he's not hurting his team by posting videos of him training on Instagram. He's not hurting his team by being a little bit more outspoken. You can make the case that Trevor Bauer puts a little bit more attention on his team, which could be seen in a bad way. But even then, I don't think Trevor Bauer is hurting a team by doing these momentum clips and showing his different pitch grips. If anything, I think it's really good for the game.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And you mentioned Trevor Bauer. This has been floating through my mind for a while. Might be a hot take, not exactly sure. When it's all said and done, I don't think the Trevor Bauer signing is going to be the biggest news of the offseason. I think the Padres trading for Yu Darvish and Blake Snell is way bigger. I think the Mets trading for Francisco Lindor is way bigger. Even if Bauer does go to the Mets or the Padres, I still think those trades are, when you actually take a look back, those are way more meaningful, and I think they will get more attention than Bauer.
Mhm.
I think Bauer will obviously give himself more attention because that's just who he is, and I love to see it. But I don't think he's going to be the biggest move of the offseason.
No, I don't think that's a hot take. If just think about who makes a bigger impact on a day-to-day basis. Francisco Lindor, he's an everyday player. He's a
Right.
shortstop. It's in the middle of the order. If you put Trevor Bauer on the Mets, that's not even the biggest move for the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
Francisco Lindor is the biggest move of the offseason. And one of my colleagues, RJ Anderson, he just wrote an article and pointed out a couple more stars that could be on the move before opening day. Arenado was on that list. If Nolan Arenado, the Dodgers have shown interest in Nolan Arenado. If he somehow moves to Los Angeles and they figure out a way to get him to Chavez Ravine, that would be a bigger move than Bauer, too. Bauer has just found a way to build his brand, and he has created this added intensity and added emphasis on the decision,
Right.
which is great for his brand. And in my opinion, great for baseball, too, because like you mentioned, this off season has been dry. This off season has been long. It's required a whole lot of patience, but he's given people a reason to talk about baseball when they otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Bauer, what Bauer's doing is great for the game. I mean, he had an amazing 2020 season, but was also only 60 games, and obviously he didn't play in all 60. So really, is he even at the level that people think? Like he put himself at that level by having all the hype around momentum and everything. Like obviously he was insanely dominant, and he still could be, but no one really knows based on his sample size. It was really just the season when he got traded to the Reds was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So
So he's a very similar case to, I mentioned Stroman about how he's able to be himself and have a little bit more freedom to do what he wants to do. Bauer is a very similar case, except they're very different people. We had Trevor's agent, Rachel Luba, on the show. She said Trevor had a little bit of a difficult childhood at times. He was not the most popular kid in school. Sometimes he even got bullied. And so when he got to the big leagues, he was actually a little outspoken on social media in a bad way. There were times he would kind of attack some of the trolls out there on social media. And Rachel had to explain to him basically why that would be bad for his brand, why that's probably not the best decision. And so Trevor learned quickly, the feel of social media, and Trevor learned quickly how to build his brand in the best way possible. And so similar yet different than Marcus Stroman, Trevor found a way to be himself. Towards the latter part of his tenure with Cleveland, he basically told Cleveland, look, I'm going to be who I'm going to be. If you like it, awesome. If you don't like it, trade me. And essentially that ended up happening. He didn't ask for a trade. I'm not saying he asked for a trade, but once Trevor became comfortable with his own body and comfortable with his own decision-making, that's when he started to flourish. And so we're seeing this small sample size of success over the past year, and he had an all-star season, I think it was 3 years ago. It's small because he wasn't able to be himself yet, but now we're seeing him be the Trevor Bauer that we all know and love, and I think that's why he's flourishing, is because he can be Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, and I completely agree. I mean, once these guys are able to be themselves on the field and not worry about being put down by the veterans that are way old school or the old school media or anything, and they just can literally just worry about being themselves, or excuse me, don't have to worry about being themselves, and they can just worry about the product on the field. It shows that it just gets that much better. I mean, we saw it with Stroman. In the World Baseball Classic, he was out there, he was flashy, he was himself, and he was the most dominant pitcher on that team.
Because they don't have to worry about what their club's going to do to him after the game. They don't have to. That's what I love the World Baseball Classic for a multitude of reasons. But one of the reasons is what you just mentioned. They're individuals out there just having fun. They're playing for something. They're playing for a title, but they don't have to worry. If they strike out 5 times in a game, does it really matter? Not really. If they strike out in a game in October in the postseason and you're playing for the Yankees, you have every reporter come to your locker room and you have articles written about you. You're hiding when you go to get a sandwich down at the market. I mean, it's a lot more pressure. And so one of the reasons I love the World Baseball Classic is they can just be themselves. And I think we really see what we've seen certain players find their true potential on that stage, which is a little bit odd because it is a big stage. But guys like Drew Smiley really had a lot of success. There were a couple of relief pitchers in there that had a lot of success too, that maybe didn't have as much success at the Major League Baseball level, but they did at the World Baseball Classic level just because they were able to be themselves.
Yeah. It's pretty cool when you see guys just realize that they can be themselves and just go off. It's pretty awesome. And we already talked about teams that are, the fun teams, the Padres and the White Sox, that are being themselves and being flashy and just growing the game in the way we want it to be grown. And you have them as your 2021 World Series matchup, don't you?
Sure do. Yep.
So you still think that is,
oh, yeah.
Definite? Yeah.
Yeah, they've given me no reason to believe otherwise. I mean, if we're being completely real here, of course, the Dodgers are still the team to beat in the National League. Until anybody takes down the Dodgers, they are still the team to beat. Right. I will say this. The Dodgers were able to retain Trinan. They've been able to shore up their bullpen a little bit so far. I still have question marks with their bullpen, and particularly Kenley Jansen.
Yeah.
If you want a deep postseason run, you need a good closer. And maybe a guy like Josh Hader is available. If the Dodgers were able to get a guy like Josh Hader, that puts them head and shoulders above anybody in my mind. Until they do that, I think there is a little bit of a question mark because they had to put Julio Urias back in their bullpen to give him a chance last year in the postseason. Right. They want Julio Urias to be a starter. They can't have him do both. You're going to have to pick and choose what he needs to do. Dustin May, they tried him out of the bullpen last year in the postseason. A little rocky. They want him to be a starter too. There's voids that need to be filled in that bullpen. And until they shore up that bullpen, I'm not going to say that the Padres are a better team right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Padres take that crown.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised either. The only reason I asked, just, the Mets are making moves. They might make more. The Dodgers still, like we said, maybe they trade for Arenado. There's still a lot of free agents that they have to either re-sign or add to the team. Plus, people forget that David Price is on the team and does plan on pitching this year. But in the AL, I mean, come on, the White Sox, I really don't see anyone better than them.
No, only because it's so hard. It's so premature to say anything right now. And I say that because
on paper.
What if Bauer goes to Chicago? What if Bauer goes to New York? It completely changes the landscape. And it's just not just Bauer. It's Real Muto. DJ obviously just re-signed with the Yankees. So that's huge for them. There's still really, really good players. Marcell Ozuna, really great, impactful players that we have no idea who they're playing for in 2020. Right. It can completely change our opinion. So I mentioned the Padres, how they have a chance to take down the Dodgers. You mentioned if the Dodgers get Arenado, if the Dodgers find a way to trade for Josh Hader, I might change my opinion. It's so early. But right now, the White Sox, you got to love what they're doing because everybody in the American League, for the most part, has lost players. The Yankees lost Masahiro Tanaka. The Rays lost Blake Snell and Charlie Morton. You're seeing a lot of American League teams lose really good players. And the White Sox have been able to add Lance Lynn, Adam Eaton. They're making big-time moves. So you got to love what
Hendricks.
Liam Hendricks, thank you. Yes, a lot of really good players, a lot of good acquisitions coming to the South side.
Honestly, they might not be done either. There's a lot of, I don't want to say lower end guys on the free agent list, but like Tommy La Stella is still out there, Kike Hernandez, guys that weren't always everyday players, but given the role, maybe they can do something. Tommy La Stella showed he could, but there's a ton of guys like that, like Jonathan Scope. For some reason, there's a lot of second basemen like that. But I mean,
the role that's where the Dodgers had so much success is Kike Hernandez,
right?
Jock Peterson. They had so
Chris
much
Taylor.
Depth. Chris Taylor, so much depth. That's what you need in the postseason.
Right. So, before I let you go, let me just ask, obviously you're excited about the Padres and the White Sox. what's another team that not necessarily, I mean, it could be this upcoming year, but in the next like 3 years, what's a team you're really excited to start watching as things start to take shape now?
Yeah, it's got to be Toronto, right? With
Mm.
their young studs, with Biggio, Vladdy, Bichette, and then Pearson too, who's going to be an absolute stud of a
Yeah.
pitcher once he is healthy. I mean, he averages almost triple digits with his fastball as a starter. He's got nasty wipeout slider to go along with it. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And they have Gurriel, of course, in the outfield. Teoscar
Mm.
Hernandez had a really good season last year. Randall Grichuk is a really good veteran outfielder that you just want on your squad. You know what you're going to get out of him. Will he be on the team long term? I don't know, but he's a really good piece for that team. They exceeded expectations last year by squeezing into the playoffs. They got swept by Tampa, but they're ahead of schedule. And so if they're able to acquire a little bit more talent, of course they got Hyunjin Ryu as their ace, a little bit more talent on the pitching rotation. Maybe they're able to get George Springer. They've been floated in talks there too.
Yeah,
Their
Real
future,
Muto's been with them too, I think.
yeah, their future is looking
So
good.
yeah, I like that answer because let's just say they do sign Springer or Real Muto. Springer would just go right in the lineup right then. They sign Real Muto, maybe then they trade Danny Jansen, get some more prospects for the future. Who knows? They're definitely a team. They were talking about Lindor. They've pretty much every big name they've been linked to,
Mm-hmm.
and they're really not playing around. Like I don't remember who just signed. It might have been Hendricks they were linked to. They had like a offer that wasn't too far behind. No, it was DJ LeMahieu that just signed today. That's where I saw it. They offered him like 78 million. So they're not playing around. They're here to stay, and it's going to be fun to watch. So
Yeah, and they've been in discussions with Bauer that we've seen too. Bauer mentioned that on his YouTube video. So
yeah, he's always
they're
wearing
in
the
it.
Blue Jays
They'll
hat.
land someone. It's just a matter of time.
Right. I completely agree. Well, thanks so much for doing this. It's been a ton of fun to talk baseball with you.
Hey, always a good time, man. Thanks so much for having me, Ben. It was a joy.
Again, huge thanks to Danny for coming on. It was a great interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. Make sure to go check out Fantasy Baseball Today, Danny's podcast with Will Middlebrooks. It is an absolute joy to listen to. And before I let you go, some big news. We have launched a website for Behind the Dirt Sports, so make sure to check that out in the link in the description. On the website, we'll be featuring blogs and other information, following guys as they progress through the big leagues and so much more. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you all enjoyed. This has been Behind the Dirt Sports.